I'm going to be focusing on rewilding, kind of zooming out from Dave's presentation and talking about some of our projects in other states, other places. So I'm going to start this so I can, well, I don't know how to use it. Okay. We have done a ton of promotion of this piece. It's really an incredible study, really short, really digestible. I highly recommend anyone and everyone reading it. Ripple et al. It was published in 2022. And it basically broke down a roadmap for federal agencies and for land management agencies to use rewilding as a tool to prepare to address a lot of the crises that we're facing. So the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and it was brought on by the Biden 30 by 30 initiative to preserve 30% of American lands by 2030. So the converging crises that it sought to address: the extended drought and water scarcity crisis, extreme heat waves, massive fires, and biodiversity loss. And the vision proposed in this academic piece is this network of rewilding. So I wish you could see it a little bit better. It's a kind of a small, I should have done a little handout, but this is a figure from the study. And so the gray wolf, the top left up there, the gray wolf historical and current ranges, that's the map you're seeing. The light pink is the historical range, and then the current range is in red. And so then over here we've got the potential reserves on federal lands, so just focusing on federal land management. It has the different ranges broken down, but you can see kind of within that figure, and then this is the connectivity among the ranges. So something that you all are so aware of and that also matters for a lot of the other rewilding, the carnivores, is what I'll be focusing on through this, is the connectivity for genetic diversity and for genetic health of these populations. So envisioning a way to have all of those populations be able to move through the landscape and connect from diverse areas and with diverse phenotypes, so genotypes. Then there's also a carbon component. Forest carbon is shown here. This is livestock allotments within potential reserves. You can see those two maps overlay pretty well. And then thinking about how all of these disturbances, how the rewilding impacts the greater plant community and the greater ecosystem. This is the quaking aspen range within those potential reserves. So I just think that's a really terrific figure. I love maps, and it's great to be able to see things from that 10,000 mile view. So then moving from there. So the approach proposed by Ripple et al. Is three-pronged. The first prong is removal of livestock through primarily the voluntary permit retirement. The second prong is wolf restoration. The third prong is beaver restoration. And we all know about the groundbreaking Yellowstone work, but just a beautiful example of these three impacts and how much they can change our riparian areas, and the importance of riparian areas. They occupy less than 2% of the landscape, but provide habitat for up to 70% of wildlife species. That's not even getting into the hydrogeology of it all, the water infiltration to our groundwater tables that this elevated storage on the uplands provides. So something that I'm always thinking about when thinking about how we can be a part of our ecosystems and how our ecosystems benefit us is the ecosystem services that are provided. I can't remember, it was one of your terms, Dave, but a better ecosystem services, what was your, for ecological, I should have written it down. Yeah, so just those trickle down, we hear about the trickle down effects of carnivores on the landscape, and then you can kind of think of the beaver restoration as trickle up and containing some of that water. Really, really good for fish populations. The sportsmen can all get on board with that, hopefully. And then carbon sequestration, enhancement for very many riparian plant and animal systems. Oh, the other thing that I love about this image, and there's tons of groundbreaking science, especially within the wildfire crisis. I come from a wildfire background, and there's emerging evidence that these wetland beaver riparian ecosystems can act as fire breaks and can aid in the suppression of these large fires and act as a natural feature within the landscape. I don't know if I have I should have that that citation in this slide, but really, if you just Google fire breaks and beavers, really groundbreaking studies. Like, I kind of have chills talking about them now. So, okay, livestock grazing. Livestock within Ripple et al., they did some quantifications that I really appreciate in terms of quantifying the impacts of livestock grazing. It poses the most common threat to biodiversity, 92 identified threatened and endangered species within the study area. Of those 92 identified species, grazing threatens 48% of them. And when you compare that to other threats that we consider enormous, mining and logging, oil and gas, it's double what any of those are on their own, or similar to all of them together. So really, yeah.
Some of those in combination, like maybe grazing and mining? Or...
You can overlay them, yes, absolutely. But in terms of the number of species that they could quantify under each umbrella. Okay. Also, other impacts that weren't addressed quite as much within that study, the degradation of biological soil crusts is something that we're starting to understand more. And also another great study that I'd recommend, there's a study by, I think it's Condon et al., I believe it was published last year, 2023. It really establishes links between biological soil crust, fire regimes, and annual invasive grasses. So when we think about how we can resist these invasions of annual invasive grasses, whether it's cheatgrass, medusa head, ventonata, there's some really strong science, really growing understanding coming about the importance of biological soil crust. Also, of course, water quality issues. Cows poop everywhere. And that poop grows some really nasty bacteria, other things that, especially in our arid West, I think of it in Colorado, and I'm sure in Nevada I shouldn't touch that. Sorry, the microphone. But I'm sure it's even more on your minds around here. Just, we have such precious water resources, and to be degrading them so constantly. Also, hydrologic changes, a lot of these developments to bring more water to the surface, whether it's a spring development or a pipeline, can change the structure of the water table. We had some great programming on that earlier. I really appreciated the dynamics that were kind of broken down by our friend at the Great Basin Resource Watch. I can't remember his name, I'm sorry. John. And infiltration in spring flows. Cattle can be stomping around in those streams or those springs and really affect the way that water flows. Yeah.
So in the previous slide, you said that you're counting on voluntary
permit retirement.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. So how are you going to get rid of them?
Yeah, that's
a lot of money.
Yeah,
they can't get enough here, so they're destroying the rainforests in Brazil and blah blah blah.
Totally. Yeah, it's a multifaceted approach. So voluntary permanent retirement is the easiest way. Of course, the easiest way to get something from someone is for them to give it to you. And so, yeah.
Or you can also be bought at. They can be bought at.
Yeah.
From nonprofits.
But some ranchers see the writing on the wall with climate change, and as many of those allotment permits, those permits are tied to baseland, and it is getting more and more difficult to run economically viable ranches on baseland. If there are a lot of ifs with that, but especially for small operations, a lot of younger generations don't want to take on the ranching business. the drought offsets. So it is partially relying on the fact that ranching is not sustainable even from an economic perspective, and that as this generational change happens, that more folks will be willing to relinquish permits. And
Well, I like her idea better that we'll buy them out.
Yeah.
Seems more logical.
yeah, and we would love to buy them out. If you have resources to help us do that, we would love that too. But we're kind of having to work all the angles and take every opportunity as it comes. We've had some real success with voluntary permit retirement. Yours came from a voluntary permit give up, right?
Yeah, I would say this, I work with the Sagebrush Habitat Conservation Fund to buy out allotments, and over the past 2 years, there's just a few of us doing that, and it's really slowed down.
Mm.
And
See? Yeah.
the ranching community does not feel pushed from threatened and endangered species issues, and cattle prices are good, and they are expecting huge speculative values for the AUMs, and it's kind of dried up over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I try to eat less beef. I don't know if
I don't eat anything in 4 legs. So.
Yeah, and I respect that immensely. Please.
I've also, know of like a permittee who, I don't know how they get away with their do, but sublease or somebody else took over his lease temporarily or, for a while because, the kids didn't want it, they couldn't do it that year or whatever. And it's like, to me, that seems wrong.
Yeah.
Flat out, shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, I think it falls under this umbrella of great hypocrisy where there's this constant claim of, well, it's our family, it's our family, it's our family, it's our heritage. And I mean, no disrespect, like there are true family operations out there. However, then as soon as the family doesn't want to take it on, it is so easy to pass it along to someone else, and it can be very speculative. So yeah, we are up against an enormous behemoth of strength in the ranching community, and we have a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to-
No, you're totally fine.
That a lot of these people could have their lifestyles transformed into a more conservation-friendly area.
Mm-hmm.
Educated in a positive, friendly way.
Yeah.
Yeah, provide alternatives.
Yeah.
There's actually an organization that will work with farmers and ranchers. I met with, there's an animal and vegan, a big conference, it's an international thing, and they have people there that go get them off public lands usually, but they'll teach them something that's they can actually farm on their property, like mushrooms or hemp or different types of things, and they'll help them do everything they need to convert their property, find them a market for it to sell it, and they're trying to move people away, and also away from like alfalfa and stuff and things that don't require as much water. So
Absolutely.
there are organizations and there is help out there for people that want to do that.
Yeah, and kind of a side note with that, something that I've been increasingly vigilant about that is kind of, for lack of a better term, a Wild West era that we're in, is these claims of regenerative ranching and selling carbon offsets. And so the science is still really new. There's a lot of work to be done. And there's a lot of claims being made based off of pretty fresh science, and so something that I'm constantly kind of reading up on and trying to stay ahead of is this enormous influx of money for carbon offsets that then is adding more support to the pedestal of this public land ranching industry. So not to digress too far, I'm gonna keep moving, but thank you for that question. You all, I think this came from one of your pages, to be honest with you, but I just think the numbers speak louder than I ever can. This is as of 2017, how many wild horses and burros the Bureau of Land Management allows on public lands today, between 16 and 27,000, versus the equivalent cow-calf pairs that the Bureau of Land Management allows on public lands today. So cow-calf pairs, that's not even individual animals, 727,000. So when we're comparing the impacts, to our public lands. We always get the short end of the stick on that one. This is, we have a map tool on our website. If you go to westernwatersheds.org, you can explore. This is just a screen grab from it. This is domestic livestock grazing allotments that are on WHMAs. So that's not even the the HAs. Thank you. I'm like, which letter is it? Not even the HAs. This is just those parceled corners. This is how much is being also authorized as a livestock grazing allotment. So I really encourage you to look locally. I'm sure many of you already know about this tool and use it. So we have been fortunate in Colorado with Western Watersheds to be involved on some native predator and native carnivore work. Two pieces of legislation. We're working a lot on the policy side. The first of which was Proposition 114 that was in the 2020 election, the reintroduction and management of gray wolves. That passed via a ballot initiative, and so by the collective will of the Colorado people, wolves were mandated to be returned to our landscape. So this was the first release that was on December 17th, I want to say, mid-December, and in north central Colorado. That's where they were released. The second piece of legislation that I have been really involved in is SB 24-127. It went before the House yesterday. It's a state bill authorizing Colorado Parks and Wildlife to reintroduce wolverines. It passed the House yesterday, it passed the Senate. I wrote that wrong. It passed the Colorado Senate yesterday. The Senate is the more conservative body, more difficult to get things through. So now it is going to move to the House and it's expected to pass. So that will provide Colorado Parks and Wildlife the authority to do that. We have work to do still on that front. They are calling for some specific rules to insulate the ski industry and the livestock industry from any potential impacts. So we're remaining engaged on that, but huge victory for wolverines in Colorado. Getting into the wolf plan a little bit more, as part of the ballot initiative, they created a comprehensive wolf management plan through Colorado Parks and Wildlife. They were advised by two groups. We'll get into that a little bit more. And these were the key elements that they identified for the wolf plan. So social tolerance for wolves and economic impacts of their presence, wolf recovery, wolf management with respect to wolf livestock interactions, wolf management with respect to wolf ungulate interactions, wolf interactions with other wildlife species, wolves and human safety concerns, monitoring, and research. So even from that list, you can kind of see that maybe the plan is not entirely focused on wolf ecology, maybe on some other interests. And that would speak to the makeup of the two groups that were advising the development of this plan. So the technical working group was intended to be scientists and experts, and for the most part, very much was some really, really incredible scientists were working on this. I am really grateful to work with them. You can see in red kind of folks who have ties to the livestock industry. Over here, it's much more clear. Within the stakeholder advisory group, almost a third of them were explicitly ranchers, and then even beyond there, ranching and other industry supported organizations, and then also trappers, hunters, anglers, and outfitters were disproportionately represented in the development of this plan. I'm going to try to go through this because I'm making some time here. Okay. The wolf management. We'll skip to the next one. The restoration implementation. 30 to 50 wolves need to be released over the next 3 to 5 years. Release locations 60 miles from state borders, west of the Continental Divide, and buffering the Southern Ute Tribe because of their request for less impact to their tribal hunting grounds. And then post-release monitoring, and this was one of the wolves when it was captured in Oregon. Our wolves came from packs in Oregon. One big red flag for us within the wolf management plan is the 10J rule that designates that the wolves in Colorado are a non-essential experimental population, and that relaxes a lot of their protections under the Endangered Species Act. So it allows for harassment, harm, hunting, or well, not hunting in Colorado, but lethal take, a lot of different things that normally would not be allowed under Section 7 of the Endangered Species Act. Especially these were specific harassment and take permissions given to livestock producers, including incidental take. So if there's suddenly a dead wolf and they say it's an accident, that's provided for. And then the EIS, one thing that they said within the EIS, which I think is kind of rich, is that the 10J could have adverse environmental impacts to individual wolves through regulated take, but is not expected to hinder recovery or have population level effects in the long term, which throughout the length of the plan, they said the opposite thing about the wolves' impact on livestock producers, is that it's very unlikely to have any impact on the industry's ability to function as a whole, but will adversely impact individuals. So kind of an interesting parallel there. So in Colorado, I've kind of gone over this. In December, there were 2 lawsuits filed against CPW by cattlemen's organizations, and the judge struck down one of them, the temporary restraining order for it, and she cited data that we had provided, kind of demonstrating the lack of threat to the industry. And so that was, the intent was to stop the reintroduction, and our intervention helped the introduction go forward. And then we've been really involved in promoting non-lethal coexistence strategies. You just walked out, but the Wood River Wolf Project, they're amazing, and we're using a lot of their resources. And then communicating, changing the dominant narrative around wolves in Colorado, because there's some deeply entrenched misbeliefs. We also, I'm just going to do a kind of smattering of our other carnivore work in other states. In Idaho and Montana, we just won our litigation. We were a party to using the ESA to limit wolf trapping within grizzly habitat during non-denning periods. And so, of course, you're winning this little corner, but that's that much less wolf trapping that will be happening in grizzly habitat in Idaho. Also, we have an active suit against Burlington Northern over grizzly bear killings in Montana and Idaho. That's a railroad company. In Arizona and New Mexico, we're super engaged on the Mexican wolf recovery. We have similar concerns. The Mexican wolf population in Arizona and New Mexico is also governed by a 10J rule, which makes them non-essential, experimental, and open to a lot more being freely persecuted. Also, as you know very well, with the wild horses, often wolves and other animals are governed by political boundaries rather than biological boundaries. There's a political boundary for the Mexican wolves of Interstate 40, and whenever they cross above Interstate 40, they are picked up by Wildlife Services and brought back down. So there have been several wolves who have repeatedly tried to move north into other territory, especially with climate change, in order for their security and genetic diversity to be able to connect populations and allow them more freedom to move up into the Grand Canyon, the greater Grand Canyon ecosystem or ecoregion, and also in southern Colorado. It's been something we've been working on with the Colorado Wolf Plan too, to try to create a zone of intergradation to allow some of those Mexican wolf genes to create a spectrum from the northern Rockies gray wolves to the Mexican gray wolves. Also, advocacy against lethal control abuses and ending a grazing permit that the owner of which was really abusing the lethal take just blatant poaching, basically. Nationally, we have a suit that we just filed challenging the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service decision to delist western gray wolves under the ESA, and yeah, the new assessment that that they are not warranted for listing is based off of flawed population models, and there was a great study in Montana showing that the Montana population models that they used to make these management decisions were overestimating the population by as much as 50%. So enormous overestimation, and it's really across all of the Northern Rockies. There's so much wolf killing going on that we just do not think that in good faith the Fish and Wildlife Service can say that there is not a threat to the population. So pushing back on those government-funded predator killings. So the Wildlife Service's predator killing, it is astounding. I don't honestly recommend looking up the numbers because it's truly horrific, the number of animals and predators that the Wildlife Service's folks with our tax dollars are killing. And then we also worked to ban M44 cyanide bombs. There was an incident in Oregon that you might be familiar with of a child getting injured by that anti-wildlife technology. So using those to also limit their effects on predators. I think that there are some really cool parallels to be drawn between wolves and wild horses, just between the importance of their family structures, their immense charisma. I think for me, I come from a science background, but I am really interested in policy and strategic thinking, and I think we have a lot of the same strategies, having charismatic individuals that we name, that are tracked and followed throughout the course of their lives. The importance of family bonds with both of them, and the trickle-down effects of the destabilization that Dave mentioned with the trickle-down. If you move that alpha male out of the pack, or oldest male, alpha male is kind of maybe not the right term, but it has huge destabilization effects and really creates more. There's a lot of science about how that creates more conflict and can even lead to more livestock depredations because you don't have those wiser older animals guiding their pack. And I think that also we both have experience with navigating the internal rivalries within our movements and within our advocacy. And so I think that I certainly am grateful for the lessons that I've learned today. And I think we're all trying to move forward in the best way, sticking to our guns and to what's important, but also trying to come together and really support one another in our movement. So Western watersheds, I've been really, really honored to work on predator issues. As with the wild horses, they just offer so much to us, both from to our imaginations and to the ecosystem and everything. So really grateful to be with y'all and to have gotten a chance to get out on the range with you yesterday. And please, if you have any other questions, I'm happy to talk afterward. And thank you.
Thank you.